Hi there, and thanks so much for joining me for this video. Now, I'm just very briefly going to talk about entrepreneurship, and I think that's something that's really been lost in this country. And when I say this country, I'm talking about the UK and Scotland, and I think Scotland in particular, we've really lost our ability to think beyond very specific traditional career paths, and the whole idea of being an entrepreneur has really gone by the wayside. Once upon a time we were entrepreneurial, now not so much. So if your child doesn't have a clear career path, and if you are somebody who you're not that keen to buy into the need for qualifications, if you don't want your child going to university, and to me it's very understandable if that's how you're feeling, if that's what your thought patterns are at the moment. What other options are there? Well, it is true that employers look for more than just a degree. They look for more than just qualifications. And what I mean by that is that they want somebody who is dependable. They want somebody who is hard-working. And they want somebody that can tell the time, that will get to work on time. They don't... What good is somebody with a degree who's late every day, or who causes division in the office, or who isn't a team player, or doesn't work hard, isn't interested in getting the work done? There are characteristics that you can instill in your child that are more useful to an employer than a degree. And, they talk about transferable skills. These are the transferable skills. The ability to make eye contact. I've heard that recently lots of young people don't want to do that. They don't want to make eye contact, show respect to their boss, get in on time, work hard, have ideas, be thoughtful. These kinds of things go a long way, and perhaps even further than a degree. So that's the first thing. Just because your child doesn't have a degree doesn't necessarily mean they won't actually get a job. But it is also useful, and the earlier, I suppose, you start working on this with your child, the better, is to think about entrepreneurial ideas. The idea that your child might actually start their own business as opposed to working for somebody else. Now, in this country, again, it's not something that people do very often. I can't speak for what it's like in Europe, whether they're entrepreneurs in Europe. I suspect it's pretty much like our own nation, and in order to find real entrepreneurs, you're going to have to go to the USA. However, that doesn't mean it's impossible. It's far from impossible. It's not that hard at all. It's just that we don't have the right mindset. So, things that you could start doing are things like pressure washing people's driveways. Now, I had a guy that came round my driveway, pressure washed, and in all honesty, I think it was a bit of a scam, and I certainly wouldn't do it again. It was expensive. He didn't make a great job, especially in the back. The front was okay, but he didn't make a great job in the back. So you can buy pressure washers. The reality is, if you charged 50 quid, you did 3 a day. That's £150 a day with minimal overheads. Initially, you would be looking at plugging your pressure washer in your customer's house. And if you asked them to do it, I'm sure they would do it gladly. And you would have to use their hose as well. So you would need equipment, which is not hugely expensive, to be honest with you. You would need that equipment. You could also use your pressure washer to wash people's cars with the same premise that they have their own hose, and you have a hose that they can plug in to, if they've got an outdoor tap, or into their kitchen sink. There are universal socket things, is that the right thing? Hose endings that you can pretty much put on any tap. So I guess it'd be worth investing in that. Getting extension cables. These are the kind of things that you would need to, as well as getting your pressure washer and a hose. These are the things you would need to look at. But eventually, what you would want to do is have your own store of water and have your own generator to power up your pressure washer. I say you, I mean, I'm obviously talking about your child, but there's an easy way to go. There's also things like window cleaning. As I said, car wash. There are car washes everywhere. However, if you found a way to go to somebody's home and do it when the car is sitting in their garden, well, that convenience adds an extra level. So it might be worth going to your local car washes, find out what their prices are, and take 50p off that price, make it slightly cheaper. So these are the kinds of things. I think once you get started down a route of these kinds of hustles, it becomes easier to build on that. I mean, there are online shops that also essentially do the work for you. I've got a friend who started on Etsy, but because of algorithms, it didn't work out for her. But I know that you can essentially, with limited input, make money on online shops like Etsy. If you've got your own craft that you can also sell, that would just add to the appeal of your particular site. So if there's something you can make by hand, and things that are popular just now are things like different kinds of glasses. Glasses are very cheap to buy. You can even buy them in the supermarket pretty cheaply. And painting them or engraving them. People love things with their names on them. So these kinds of things, markets that you can aim for, although we're not going down the school route, markets that you can aim for are end of terms or Christmas time for teachers. There's also things like candles, again, starting small. There are candle making kits you can buy. I'm sure there are ways of making very cheap tea lights. Put a bit of essential oil in, and there you've got scented candles that I'm sure are very cheap to make, and you can pack them in bulk, make them a nice colour, send them off. These are the kinds of things that I'm talking about. So I would recommend that you, as part of your home education day, work into that. Maybe not every day, but maybe 2 or 3 times a week, a bit of entrepreneurship. You can start them in the house. You can pay them for chores. Then you can encourage them to go to your next door neighbours and ask if they want any chores done. Once they're proficient in your own home, you can see how well they wash the dishes, you can see how well they clean the floor, wash the windows. Send them to your next door neighbour to mow the lawn or whatever, and then beyond that, looking at the neighbourhood, and beyond that, getting business cards, so on and so on. So, the reason why I think these, apart from the fact that the child will become their own boss, and into adulthood, they become independent, competent, and so on. These are also the kinds of jobs that will always be needed. Okay, if financially the country is not doing well, some of these things like pressure washing a driveway or getting a car washed might become luxuries, but essentially these kinds of jobs will always be needed. And if you target areas around you where people have a bit of money, you're more likely to be able to thrive no matter what the economy is doing. And you instill the right attitude in the child. They want to do the job well. They want to have a good relationship with their customer. It's a service they're providing, and they're keen to serve. If you're keen to serve, it's easier to go the extra mile for your customer, and so on like that. So that's just some of my thoughts on entrepreneurship, and I really would like to see the next generation becoming more entrepreneurial. Something else that's just come to mind is 3D printers. Now, I do know somebody who, he's a teenager, he's never been to school, and he makes some part for a gun. I want to say it's a mount, but actually I don't know. But he makes it with a 3D printer, and he has been successful in that. He's able to make, it's not a huge income, but it is a start. He's a teenager, so he's just starting out. And actually, I'm sure there are ways of finding out what, using AI websites, you could find out what can you sell on eBay that you make from a 3D printer, and it'll tell you what things are popular, what to make, and so on, what colours are good, and so on and so on. So these are just some thoughts. Some of them have outlays. I mean, ultimately what you want to do is to have low overheads, because you want to be easy entry for yourself and your child into that area of work. Also, you don't want to force your child to do something that they're absolutely hating. What you want is for your child to actually enjoy the work. So that adds an extra layer as well onto it. Okay, thanks so much for watching, and see you again. Bye.